How did our media do in terms of narratives that we threw out? Because internationally, I think we failed when it comes to a narrative.
Media was like a mad bull. It was let loose to its own imagination because no inputs were coming. So they started getting into a speculative mode.
Correct.
That हमने पाकिस्तान के 9 एयरफील्ड नष्ट कर दिए. The nuclear leak was the birth of that speculative mode, though it has been confirmed there was no nuclear leak.
There's no nuclear leak?
Yeah. And if the news is not verified, how can you say that it is ethical reporting?
True. What should we do? How should we improve our systems and process?
कहाँ जाएं? Time नहीं है. There is no time because the threat is at your doorstep. So start preparing yourself to fight a high technology war, a high tech war. Build up your drone strength, build up your anti-drone warfare equipment, build up your missiles and build up your air defense systems. China will become a bigger problem to you than Pakistan because China is establishing bases right in your neighborhood.
In the aftermath of Operation Sindoor, the world saw India act with surgical precision, indigenous capability, and steely resolve. But behind the strikes and headlines lies a deeper transformation in our defense ecosystem, one that's been long in the making and still has a long way to go. Joining me today is someone who's been at the heart of this transformation, Major General Rajan Kochhar, a leading voice on defense preparedness, indigenous capability, and strategic foresight. A veteran of logistics and procurement, General Kochhar brings sharp insights into what Operation Sindoor reveals about our military readiness, the state of indigenization, and growing pain of India's private defense sector. We'll explore why Sindoor was not just an operation, but a statement. What it means for India's push towards Atmanirbharta, the invisible hurdles facing private manufacturers, the role and responsibility of Indian media in wartime, and how India should think about its future strategic goals. This episode isn't just about what happened, it's about what must happen next. So, without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought-provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. Major General Rajan Kochhar, welcome to Dive Publishers, sir. A pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be invited to your channel.
So you know what kind of conversations we're going to have for the last 20 days. I know how busy you have been with the same topics and that we've been in discussion as well. Of course, we'll talk about Operation Sindoor and what happened in Pahalgam on 22nd April. To begin our conversation, I want your perspective on how Indian Armed Forces did in Operation Sindoor.
Operation Sindoor was a unique operation in its manner that it was fought over a very limited duration. The peculiarity of this operation was that both the countries, India and Pakistan, did not violate the international border or the line of control. The battles were fought from within our own territories. So this is something which we saw for some time, if you recollect last year, between Iran and Israel. A similar kind of warfare in which missiles were used and drones was used. But in this case, it was a regular action happening over a period of 4 days. As a military analyst, how do I see this operation? I see this operation as a hallmark of a very fine strategy from India, which focused only on the terror infrastructure of Pakistan, because we never made a statement, or the political aim of Prime Minister Modi was very, very clear that we need to target the terror infrastructure of Pakistan. So The operation was conceptualized in a manner that it was de-escalatory in nature. India made this operation or planned this operation on a premise that it will not be an escalatory action. So it started off on the 7th May with targeted strikes based on hard intelligence in 9 terrorist camps of Pakistan. The Indian military establishment had identified 21 of such camps, but a decision was taken with the Prime Minister that we will not address all 21 because it may get into a higher escalation ladder. So it was decided that only 9 terrorist camps will be targeted. Then there were 2 important aspects which went into this operation: a date and time, timing of the operation, when it was to be done, and what kind of a weapon system is going to be used against each target for maximum effect. So 2 important things actually come out now. It took them almost 14 days to carry out this operation, to wait for this operation after Pahalgam happened. Now there were large questions from the people of our country that why Prime Minister Modi was delaying the strike when he promised the nation that हम जल्दी ही वार करेंगे, चुन चुन के मारेंगे. But the people need to realize one thing, that whenever such a critical operation is planned, it requires a detailed planning, a detailed intelligence of those targets, and to ensure that when you strike, the terrorists are present at that location.
Got it.
There is no point hitting a target when nobody is there. So,
True.
this was the entire rationale, and subsequently how it progressed, there was a retaliation from Pakistan, drones and missiles targeting our air defense systems. So this was escalatory in nature. So this had to be responded to. We responded in carrying out strikes on their command control elements as well as their
Air bases.
The air bases were targeted because Pakistan a day prior had tried to target our military establishments, our military units. So from the terror infrastructure, this operation got expanded to include the military infrastructure. So that is the reason we went for the air bases, because people many times ask me also, कि sir, you Prime Minister said कि हम तो terror infrastructure मारेंगे, तो आपने उनके air bases को क्यों मारा?
Well, that's how a ladder of escalation works.
Yeah, absolutely. So the escalation actually worked in that manner, and our targets, to sum it up, planned well, executed well, delivered the right kind of results, made their air defense to an extent non-functional, destroyed their air bases, made their runaways unoperational for a period of 8 hours to 7 days. So the aim was achieved, and of course thereafter we all know the ceasefire took place.
So the message was loud and clear that any mishappen on the border or anywhere else, India is a different India now. It is ready to retaliate and with a hard slap as well. So as a military strategist, I want to understand from you your net assessment from April 22nd to May 11th on how you see our civil military fusion and integration, on how our armed forces work together, on how diplomacy was. I want to hear your net assessment on, first let's start with our diplomacy.
See, it's very important that when you carry out such an operation which can lead to a war, you need to convince the world why you want to do it.
Correct.
So, to that extent, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar did a wonderful job. He galvanized embassies of 26 nations. He identified the key 26 countries where the message must go. Then he invited all the foreign diplomats who were there in Delhi, and a proper briefing was given to them.
Correct.
That how the operation happened and why we did it, and all. Trying to convince the world that it was required. Because of this kind of initiative or outreach, I will say, we received a tremendous support from almost all the countries except China.
And Turkey as well.
And Turkey, Azerbaijan, all these 3-4 countries which are in
pro-Pakistan,
in collusion with the Pakistan.
Do
So
heavy
it was
business
obvious.
with them.
But the major powers of the world
All condemned.
appreciated our actually concern
Yeah.
and recommended that India has a right to retaliate.
They all condemned the attack, and
Yes,
they were
absolutely.
supportive in all
Yes.
action that PM Modi would take.
So I would give diplomacy 9.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Right?
Second point would be, of course, the politico-military collaboration. We see a lot of high-level meetings from PM, Rajnath Singh, even NSA, as well as these 3 chiefs, service chiefs, and the CDS. What kind of message that gives us? Because we've seen the position of CDS come in to integrate our forces. What do you think our politico as well as military fusion came out to be like?
The way our organization structure is there in our country, the decision making flows from the political leadership. It's very clear.
Unlike in Pakistan.
Yeah, unlike in Pakistan. So the military commanders don't decide what to do. Prime Minister Modi formulated a political aim, which he gave to the military commanders, so that the military commanders could convert it into a military aim, and thereafter military aim into tasking for the army, for the Indian Army, for the Indian Air Force, and for the Indian Navy.
Navy as well, very important.
Mind you, the tasking of the Indian Navy was also very clear.
Yeah.
So now, coming to the fusion part, there was daily meetings happening, kind of reporting happening. What was happening on ground was being conveyed to the top leadership
Absolutely.
almost at the same time. So every day, a review of the situation was taking place at the level of the Prime Minister. But the advantage of this sort of interaction was that the military leadership was very, very clear at the end of each day what they were supposed to do the next day. So whatever political aims or political orders were given by the Prime Minister were being converted into the military tasking and the military aims almost simultaneously. So there was a cohesiveness, and I think it's a lesson learned that in all future wars, this should be the methodology of
approach.
actually working out or planning or orchestrating a war. And therefore I feel there was a great deal of synergy between the political establishment and the military commanders. And because of this clarity of thought, you have seen the results.
Your assessment out of 10?
Political 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10?
Yeah.
Why not? What was the reason of the 2 deduction from your report card? So?
A near perfect operation, if it was, I would have given a 9.5 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. But there were certain instances where possibly we could have done better.
Such as?
In the execution of our sort of tasks, in the assessment of the capabilities of our adversary. So always remember one thing, that there can never be a perfect operation.
True.
You cannot assess anybody as a 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. You have to leave certain scope for improvement.
Correct.
And I'm sure the powers to be have identified the areas where the improvement is required. I would not like to go into too much of detail here.
Roger. So next point I would want to cover is an important part, which would talk about the capability development. For the last maybe 20-25 years, a lot of military strategists have been talking about how our readiness is in terms of a war when it comes to a two-front war with either China, Pakistan, or 2.5 war as well. What do you think our capability was like in this current situation, which wasn't really a war? We won't call Operation Sindoor a war, but a war-like situation. How do you think our capability was in terms of our military equipments, drones, airplanes, aircrafts, our readiness in the armed forces, in Army, Navy, and Air Force?
See, always remember one thing. No armed forces of the world is perfect. We may desire something, but it is not necessary that all our desires get fulfilled. There are a lot of constraints. A budget is a constraint. Technology assimilation is a constraint. You see, I may talk of artificial intelligence. I may talk of machine learning.
Or drones, for that matter.
Autonomous technology. Robotics. But can I assimilate it into the armed forces in a seamless manner? That is very important.
That's the challenge.
That is the biggest challenge of the Indian Army, and I'm sure the Indian Air Force and Navy also have similar challenges. What we had to showcase in this war in terms of our military equipment was very obvious. Since we were not crossing the LC or the IB, we were resorting to heavy shelling. That means that our RT guns were in good shape. Dhanush guns and Bofors were delivering. We demolished the bunkers across the LC. We had sufficient ammunition for this kind of a task.
A long, prolonged war.
No, I'm not talking about prolonged war. I'm talking about right now how our equipment has performed in this war. And then we'll graduate to the longer duration war.
That's the challenge, sir. It's difficult to analyze this particular situation because it was a short 4-day situation.
Yeah, it's not possible to analyze.
I mean, I remember having these conversations in closed door events where we used to talk about the new age warfare is a short game, short war. But that changed when we saw the war in Russia and Ukraine and Gaza, Israel, that they were so prolonged that it lasted years. But of course, we can't analyze the fact that we are ready for that kind of war yet because we haven't seen our capability yet.
Every country has a war doctrine of his own.
Correct.
Our war doctrine will not be the same as the Russian war doctrine. Our capabilities and our defense ecosystem will not be the same as the Russians because we do not have that level of indigenization as the Russians have. We are largely dependent on most of our defense needs through imports. We are the second largest importer of military hardware in the world, in spite of Atmanirbhar Bharat and in spite of Make in India. It'll take time. We have started. The roadmap has been aligned, but the roadmap will take 15-20 years. So don't expect your army to be fully stocked, fully equipped for a long war as of now. The economy is also a factor. The defense budget is also a factor. And if I bring in the defense budget here, because that is close to my heart, I've been writing on it a lot. 1.6% of the GDP being allocated to
not even 2%.
Yeah. Secondly, we hardly give any importance to research and development.
Correct.
So when your R&D intake is very low, your technology generation or your getting the technology into our country is going to be very, very difficult. So then you will resort to buying of technology, which is a very costly
Absolutely.
process. So I would like to recommend to the government, because see, now you got to see the geopolitical scenario of our own security apparatus today. Where are the threats? Threats are from Pakistan, threats are from China, from Bangladesh. The three major threats. So Bangladesh was not a threat earlier.
True.
But now we have to take Bangladesh into account, especially now the Awami League has also been banned.
Yeah.
So the elections, you will have a political party coming to Bangladesh which will be anti-India. So this will be a permanent threat in being. Then we have threats within our own country. Jammu and Kashmir is an issue by itself. Okay, Naxal things are happening now in a very good way, and the Home Minister has said that I think another 2 years the Naxal thing will be over. So that is a thing. But what about Northeast? What about the Myanmar border? Because Myanmar border is also a situation you have to contend with today.
Absolutely.
Because that border is controlled by the rebels today, by the Arakan army, by the Chin National Army. 1643 kilometers of our border is with Myanmar, and that border is not fenced. Mind you, that border is not fenced, and we don't have a BSF deployed there. The Assam Rifles takes care of the border.
Yeah.
So these are the challenges we'll have to take into account, and mind you, let us not think of downsizing or right sizing the Indian Army. We are down to 11 lakhs today from a 13 lakh army. We need to grow to at least 15 lakhs if we have to preserve the
Sovereignty of a nation.
15,000 kilometers of our land borders. 10,000 kilometers are contested. These are contested borders, 10,000 kilometers.
True. So many adversaries.
And there is no country in the world which has these kind of threats.
They're in the neighborhood.
Yes, as India has. So, taking that into account, we have a very long way to go. There are deficiencies. Air Force talks about its squadrons. 42 squadrons are required.
Only 31s there.
Now, Air Force is saying that with the current threat perception, the requirement is 45 squadrons.
Is it?
Yes. So 45 to 29, you have to build up those 16 squadrons. Navy is crying hoarse for a nuclear submarine.
There are only 2 at the moment. 2 SSBNs.
So whatever number they have, we require more nuclear submarines because the sustenance of sea has become very important. Your survivability in the sea is also become very important. So you have to strengthen your navy, and the naval and the maritime threats from China are not receding. They are increasing because China is establishing bases right in your neighborhood.
In the Indo-Pacific as well.
Mangla port in Bangladesh, China is actually coming into.
Yeah.
Saint Martin Islands will be the next. China has already taken control of Coco Islands, part of Myanmar.
Yeah.
So we are seeing these changes happening in our neighborhood. So I think this is my very, very firm conviction. I want the government to increase the defense budget to 3% of the GDP.
That's also less, I feel.
We can only give that much right now.
So now after seeing
Because beyond that, it won't be possible.
after seeing a threat perception and see what the capacity of our adversaries is, I think even 3% is not enough, because when you talk about 3%, 50% of it goes in your revenue procurement or your other tasks such as the salaries, your everything that goes around. Only 25% of it is capital procurement. 25% of 1.6% that you spoke about is capital procurement at the moment. To sustain ourselves in terms of bringing a new material, research and development, even 3% won't be enough, sir.
See, you have to understand, a budget has 3 major parts. One is your capital expenditure, one is your revenue expenditure, and one is the pay allowances and your pensions. Let us remove the pay allowances and pensions, from this.
That's 50%. Let's say that's 50%.
So when we talk of budgeting of the Indian Army, let us focus on allocation on the capital and on the revenue, because this pay allowances is more or less constant. 3% up and down will go because more people are retiring, so the pensions will also increase and things like that. 2 to 3% increase in the pensions take place every year. So let us focus on your revenue and your capital expenditure. Capital expenditure needs to be given more impetus because your revenue expenditure more or less remains the same.
Correct.
Where the focus is, it is on the capital expenditure, because in case you want to modernize an army, if you want to bring in new equipments, if you want to buy aircrafts, submarines, platforms,
New defense systems.
so from where the money will come?
From a capital expenditure.
So that is the area, and I think the private sector has to come in a big way. Today, the entire capital budget you have, 75% is earmarked for your government PSUs, ordnance factory, things like that, and 25% for the private sector.
Which is not enough.
Whereas your export, if you see the figures today, whatever your export targets are, say if it was 35,000 crores this year,
It exceeds.
private sector has contributed 75% to your export targets, and your government or your PSUs have only contributed 25%.
I didn't understand this part.
I'll tell you.
Okay, in terms of exports, you are saying private companies export more than the DPS.
Yes,
Got it.
and you are allocating less money to them.
True.
With a lesser allocation to them from the defense budget, they are giving you 3 times what your defense PSUs are giving you.
But even then, I would say, sir, the capacity to export or even produce indigenous products is much more than what we have right now, because what I deal with a lot of private manufacturers, and what I feel is their morale is quite down when it comes to manufacturing because of the acquisition procedures. The orders aren't enough for the private players.
It's got nothing to do with the acquisition procedure. Acquisition procedure has been amended in 2020. After that, 3 more amendments have happened. 2022, 2024 also, some amendments have taken place. See, you have to understand that there is a process by which an item is acquired. When I was in service, it used to take around 5 to 7 years for equipment to be inducted into service in
Correct.
case we had to buy something. Today, we have reduced it to around
3 years.
2 to 3 years, right? Possibly, there is a case in a point to further reduce it down to 1 year.
Looking at the technology cycles, imagine procuring a technology after 3 years when by the time it gets reductant.
Yeah, it is. There is a need to further bring in some kind of a refinement here.
It is, sir, you mentioned about the reform of the DAP 2020, it happened in, and from 200 pages manual, it got to now 680 pages of defense acquisition procedure, which doesn't make sense when it comes to procuring, because it only it increases the time period of your procuring any product. Like you said, from 5 years, it's now 3 years.
You see, some new chapters have been added,
Sir, 3 times the page.
which were not there earlier. There was a strategic partnership model was not there earlier. Other things have been.
What I mean to say is, sir, if you want to reduce this cycle of 2 years or 3 years, you need to make it simpler. You need to have that opportunity of manufacturers to hit and try, manufacture for you, so that the orders are placed, so that they have the resources and the money to even do their R&D that we expect them to do.
See, there is a trust factor which comes here. What are the agencies who are involved in the procurement process? There is the user, who is the Indian Army.
Navy, Air Force,
There is a ministry involved.
the bureaucrats,
There is an audit organization involved,
DGQA.
DGQA, as well as our
DG acquisitions, the DG acquisition department.
our audit authorities, and there is a vendor involved.
Vendor.
Yeah, it's private sector. Whoever is the vendor or industries involved.
Industry partners.
So when you have a process like this, when so many people are involved,
Stakeholders.
and you are dealing with technology, you are dealing with defense, you are dealing with some form of confidentiality, in the sense that you are dealing with a very, very sensitive sector, in which you want to ensure that whatever technology you are getting or you are dealing with must have certain checks and balances. So when you have certain checks and balances in the process where trust is involved, you are bound to have certain amount of procedural requirements. And that is why these delays take place. Now the focus has to be like a critical path method system. Try to focus on the areas where maximum delays take place. Try to reduce those delays in that you process. And if the government is able to focus on that critical path method, trying to see that which activity is taking the most of the time and how to reduce that activity so that the end result is faster, and getting the equipment into the service in the Indian Armed Forces is much faster. So I think there is a need to go into this aspect in a slightly more deliberate manner.
I'm glad we deflected towards improving our capability in terms of armed forces, because at the end of the day, what we learned from this crisis, this conflict, is that there is a need to improve our manufacturing, our industry, our defense ecosystem for that matter. Having said that, we will get back to the conversation of Operation Sindoor, but we also must understand that now that there is an insecurity in terms of our threats that we have around our neighborhood, we must amp up our production, our defense ecosystem, in amping up our defense budget, our indigenization of our manufacturing as well. So I'm glad that we went that direction. But let's get back to the Operation Sindoor and the 22nd April Pahalgam attacks, and speak about something which is very important. When there's a war-like situation, there's a lot of civil society's role also in place in terms of narrative building. Our media. What do you think how did our media do in terms of narratives that we threw out? Because internationally, I think we failed when it comes to a narrative. Your take, sir.
See, what the overall this thing, narrative and communication, information, credibility comes under the broad area of strategic communication. Now, strategic communication is an area where each country has to invest. And unless you invest in strategic communication, you will not get results. You can't expect the media to do it. In strategic communication, there are a number of agencies who get involved. First agency is the government. A next agency is your civil society. A next agency is your media. And mind you, it's not only the electronic media, the print media also plays a very important role. Today, all international newspapers, New York Times, Washington Post, all the other papers, how many of our journalists write regular articles there? A small example I'll give you. A majority of these papers are dominated by people of Islamic origin or Muslims who have got a more affiliation to Pakistan than to India.
Agreed.
So what happens is that when they start writing or projecting a narrative, obviously it won't be pro-India narrative.
Got it.
So the opinion building starts in the international fora right from the print media, because print media is supposed to be more credible than the electronic media. All people who are into policy making get influenced by the print media more than the electronic media, because electronic media caters for
The
TR,
mass.
for the mass, for the TRPs and all. So it doesn't really carry that this thing with the policy makers, but it will carry more weight with the general population.
Got it.
So now, when you talk about compare India and Pakistan, Pakistan has been investing in strategic communications since a very long time. Almost more than 30 years now, Pakistan has been investing. If you look at the way their DG ISPR is structured. The other day, I was going through some of the Pakistani newspapers, and I came across advertisements of the ISPR asking for young boys and girls like you to be recruited by ISPR and starting their YouTube channels, projecting a particular narrative which the ISPR wanted them to project. So what happens is, the world thinks that it's a private YouTube channel. The person who is the anchor or
The host.
who is the host, he is a young boy or a girl. He will appeal to his age group of people across the border. So you see that Jammu and Kashmir, the youth are getting radicalized because they are listening to these programs being generated by a Pakistani youngster on his YouTube, not knowing the narrative behind that is of the ISPR.
Got it.
So here is the government and the civil society nexus we are seeing. How the government is ensuring involvement of the civil society, the young people in question, in spreading its own narrative, and thereby, creating a more credible projection
Got it.
of their aims and objectives. Unfortunately, we have an equivalent in the Indian Army as the ADG-PI, a public information, who shies away from the civil.
Yeah, absolutely.
So not only that, in this 4 days conflict I have seen, ADG-PI
Had no role.
has had no role, gave no information,
At all.
did not also create a methodology that what needs to be projected so that media also gets wise. Now, media was like a mad bull. It was let loose
Yeah.
to its own imagination because no inputs were coming except the press briefings.
Correct.
That also came
At the-
subsequently. So they started getting into a speculative mode.
Correct.
The nuclear leak was the birth of that speculative mode, though it has been confirmed there was no nuclear leak.
There's no nuclear leak?
Yeah. International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed there's no nuclear leak. What more confirmation you want from anybody else? That's an independent body who has gone and inspected the Pakistan sites and said there was no nuclear leak. Whom do we believe? We believe the media, we believe our own people, a couple of generals and senior officers are giving interview about the leak as if they were present there. From where are they getting this information about the leak? Who's giving them the information? People of Pakistan or Pakistan media? I don't think they're speaking about it at all.
Absolutely.
So here comes the credibility of the organization, credibility of the media, that whatever news you are airing on your channel, have you got it verified? Has that news been verified? And if the news is not verified, how can you say that it is ethical reporting?
True.
For example, you have made a bold statement that हमने पाकिस्तान के 9 एयरफील्ड नष्ट कर दिए. नष्ट का क्या मतलब होता है?
Yeah. The disruptions, basically.
How much of it?
Yeah.
Have you got credible intelligence available that to what extent these airfields were destroyed and how much time it will take for the airfields to get functional? So here comes the important aspect. Here the government and the media has to work together. This is my recommendation. Please don't blame the media for the kind of reporting they've been doing.
They were in the dark, so they would
Because
speculate.
they were making their own stories to some extent to bring up the morale of the nation, to tell the people everything was going absolutely very, very great for us. No doubt it was going great for us, but to bring it on the news channels and to propagate it as the truth, one needs to verify. And there were some channels, very responsible channels, and I've been, talking to these channels also. I have also been going to a lot of media channels who told me, कि, sir, we will not project a narrative which is not verified. So that is the kind of effective reporting, and therefore the role of the government to ensure whatever information government is feeding them
That must go out.
is that must be projected.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was not being done. So I think it's a work in progress. We need to get into these things. Strategic communication has to be formalized. There has to be a department for strategic communication in the
Correct.
government itself.
Correct.
And within the armed forces, there has to be an information brigade.
Not just PROs, but also designated people.
One organization where the information is being made available and disseminated to the public at large, and you need to involve the younger generation. You need to involve young people as a part of your process.
Correct.
Because unless you do that, this media war will not be won by you. Today, we have won the war, but we have lost the media war.
Correct. Absolutely, sir. Your rating on the narrative building of our nation.
Yeah. Huh?
What would be your rating?
You 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. Very poor rating, but that's fine. That's,
Yeah, we
I
have
would
not been
agree
able
as
to
well.
build the narrative
I
at
would
all.
agree. The international community didn't believe Indians to do the right thing. They were with the Pakistanis, and rightly so, because we weren't feeding enough information.
Yes.
I would want to end our conversation, so with this question. For example, we were mentioning about indigenization of our manufacturing. Because of this, our government and our military would be a little insecure now in terms of the adversities that we have. And on the same hand, the US would like us to feel insecure because they would want us to procure from them. What should we do? How should we improve our systems and process in the defense ecosystem to counter that US narrative?
It's a catch-22 situation. Because right now, कहाँ जाएं? Time नहीं है. There's no time because the threat is at your doorstep. You don't know the next war maybe 6 months away.
Absolutely.
So in case the next war is 6 months away, what indigenization can be expected at this stage? So let us divide this into 2 parts, a short-term strategy and long-term strategy. Let us take the short-term strategy and let us play into a scenario where we don't go for a war or we don't go for a long war. Even if the war is there, it will be a short, swift war. So start preparing yourself to fight a high technology war, a high tech war. For that, build up your drone strength, build up your anti-drone warfare equipment, build up your missiles, and build up your air defense systems. These are the 3-4 areas. Build up your rocket regiments.
Even drones, for that matter. You mentioned drones.
Yeah. So the next part is build up your air force. Why I'm actually saying is because air force has the longest reach and also the fastest reach. Any war which starts starts with the air power. Subsequently, the military power, ground forces, and the naval forces come into being. The first strike is always by the Air Force. So, build up your deficiencies of your Air Force. Even you have to go for procurements from outside, Su-57s, or you want more upgradation of the Sukhois.
Our homegrown Tejas needs to be amplified.
Yeah,
AMCA,
your
as well as-
AMCA, Tejas and all. Go for these projects and go for them on a very, very fast track and give them the budget. Give them the money and do the procurements. Give impetus to your startups, your MSMEs for your drone manufacture.
True. There's so many drone
There are
manufacturers.
so many. We are so much rich in talent as far as drones are concerned. Bangalore, you see, is the hub of drones. Chennai, you see, Hyderabad, you see. All these people have got their own setups and they are doing a wonderful job. So let's get them on board as part of our process, because this would be your short-term strategy. In your long-term strategy, right from day one, please get your joint ventures going. Get people from outside to develop their manufacturing base in India.
And transfer the technology.
Yeah, you get Russia here, France here,
Germany.
all the like-minded companies, Germany here. Let us start manufacturing our aircrafts in our country. Let us start manufacturing our ammunition by the private sector. Adani is doing a wonderful job in Kanpur. So we want many more of such industries coming up in India and give them captive orders. You mentioned in your program initially that you were speaking to the industry people and they were apprehensive that they don't get enough orders. Make it sustainable for themselves to do business with you. And for that, you have to give them captive orders. For the next 5 years, you assure them these many orders will be coming to you on a yearly basis. They can set up their plants accordingly, their production lines accordingly, and there won't be a problem. So, wherever you are finding that you have a void or you have a deficiency in terms of ammunition holdings, in terms of your mine holdings, in terms of your other weaponry, in terms of your small arms, in terms of your medium caliber ammunition. So, start having a mix of your imports to make up deficiencies for the immediate threat and for your long-term threat, which is China.
Correct.
Because let me tell you, one day China will become a bigger problem to you than Pakistan. Take it from me.
It already is.
It is going to happen. Today, China is lying low. He is not flexing his muscle the way he normally does, but he is only waiting you for his time to come.
True. Agreed.
So, in the long term, your adversary is China. In your short term, your adversary is Pakistan right now.
And Bangladesh.
Okay, Bangladesh, not to that extent, we can manage the situation there. But focus on these two of your threats. Short term for Pakistan, long term for China. Start preparing for Pakistan straight away. In the next 6 months, you should have enough of your military strength and hardware to take on Pakistan, even if there is a war.
Correct.
And subsequently, indigenization, your Make in India, your Atmanirbhar Bharat should be put on a war footing with enhanced budget, 3% of the budget for the China threat.
Absolutely, sir. You very rightly said we need to make a robust defense ecosystem for our defense, our adversaries that we have in our neighborhood. And a lot of good points have come through this conversation. I'm honored to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that the audience had a lot of takeaways as well, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on your show. And God bless you youngsters, like you are doing a wonderful job. you educating the people, creating that awareness, and also sending a message to the government.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. We at DOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better. Our production quality is going to get even better. And hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.